Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Howard Schultz said, in times of adversity and change, we really discover who we are and what we're made of. Adversity in our personal and professional lives is inevitable. We all experience challenges. It's how we frame adversities and work to overcome them that make all the difference. Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about overcoming adversity, breaking through limiting beliefs, growing into the person you were meant to be, and creating a life of fulfillment. Our guest is an entrepreneur, speaker, host of the Inc. magazine top-rated podcast, The Growth Now Movement, and creator and host of one of the premier events for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers, Growth Now Movement Live. He's been featured in Thrive Global and chosen as an icon of influence in the new media space. Please welcome the man who understands that our toughest adversity is also our greatest gift, Justin Schenck. Justin, thank you so much for being here. It is fantastic to see you.
Jay, thank you so much, man. I loved that intro. Not only just your voice, by the way. So I would love to have your voice, but just how you did that. Oh, perfect, man. I'm just excited to dive in and hopefully add some value and pour into your audience the best I can.
And I know you will. And I'm super excited about this conversation. I've been waiting for this one. You and I had scheduled quite some time ago. And you know, you have certain conversations in life that you know are going to touch you the right way. And I know this is one of them. So I'm super grateful for you being here. And I thought a great jumping off point would be to wind the clock back a bit. And let's start with your backstory. There's lots of nuances and complexities to your story. And I would love for you to share a thumbnail sketch and take us to where you are today. And we're going to unpack some of what you share, but let's go back in time a bit.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate it. And like you said, I'll try and condense this as much as possible because I think everybody has a story. Everybody has a journey. Everybody has, this life they've traveled through that, however bad they think it is, there's always an adversity. There's always a thing. And mine really started at a younger age. When I was in high school, I wasn't the best student. As a matter of fact, I would say that if there was a senior superlative for least likely to succeed, definitely would have been me. I had a 1.7 GPA at one point. My mom at that point was in the middle of a 20-year opioid addiction and my dad was in jail. And when you look at all of that, you kind of would say, you've got no shot, kid. And actually statistics state that if your parent is an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict. And if your parent's in jail, you have a 50% chance of being in jail. And if you do the math, I'm 100% screwed at that point. And so at 19, I ended up getting a job in direct sales because obviously college wasn't the path with that GPA. And I had a mentor in that organization that handed me a book called Who Moved My Cheese? And that book opened my eyes to not only, the idea that I can take control of my life, but also what is self-development. And I went down a path beginning at 19 years old of how do I create the life that I desire? And through this, I made many, many mistakes and I've created businesses that have failed, 3 to be exact. And then about 5.5 years ago, I started podcasting. Well, I should say, I started podcasting about 5.5 years ago. The idea came 6 years ago. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast so I can interview entrepreneurs and pick their brains so I can figure out how to do this entrepreneur thing. There was no idea of Inc. magazine or building an audience or building a brand. It was, let me connect with the right people. And what ended up happening was about 3 to 4 months before the launch, my mom ended up losing her battle to opioids. And it was in that moment that I realized that I was chasing the wrong thing. Like I was chasing notoriety, I was chasing money, I was chasing all the things society said I should chase versus what it is I want. And that was happiness and fulfillment. And the idea that when I wake up every morning, I want to be happy. Because one thing I realized is my mom didn't die from an addiction. My mom died because she didn't love herself. And so I began this journey in the podcast of how do we bounce back from a rock bottom moment? How do we create the life that we want? And now where I am today, you know, a podcast that gets played in 100 countries every single week. And I've built a business around it, and I help high achievers really build fulfillment or find fulfillment in their life. And it's been such a great journey for me that started at that rock bottom moment.
Well, clearly there's a lot to that story, and you've shared just some nuggets, which I really do appreciate you doing that, because I think it's important that it gives some context and a bit of background on who you are, where you started, and some of the trials and tribulations that you went through that lead you to where you are today. But clearly there's so much more, because there's a lot of work that goes into creating the kind of life that we want, creating happiness, creating fulfillment. And I wanted to first talk about that moment when you read a book that changed your life. So what was it specifically about the words in that book, in the meaning of that book, that just shook you to the core and opened your eyes?
Yeah, you know, I'll go back to the fact that how the book was written. I mean, I'm not, and still at this point, I'm 36 years old. At this point, I'm not an academic, right? So when I read the book, better really bring me in and keep me hooked. And so it's a super easy read. It's really just a story of these characters who are running through a rat race, essentially. And they've built the life that they thought they wanted. It gets taken away from them, and they go and chase the next thing because it's taken away. And they all react in different ways. And what I realized was it actually kind of opened my eyes to something my uncle said to me when I was 16 years old. My uncle's a very successful businessman. And he said to me, you know, Justin, there's two types of people in the world. There's proactive and there's reactive. And in this book, these types of behaviors were really highlighted: being reactive, being frozen, being proactive, doing all the things we had to do to try and build our life. And it really opened my eyes to the idea that things are going to change around me no matter what. And it's going to continue to happen, right? Like bad things are going to continue to happen no matter how good of a person I am, no matter how great of a path that I'm on. Bad things are always going to happen. You're going to lose a loved one. Your business might fail, whatever the case may be. And I realized that that's okay. And that book taught me that it's really about how I react to these changes. And so it really got me out of that potential victimhood that I could have walked down at such a young age, to say, woe is me, this is where I came from, so this is who I am. And it made me realize that I have total control over this life. And so it was that aha moment for me. Obviously, it took a long time to create the life that I wanted, but it was that aha moment it gave me hope to realize that I can create the life that I want.
Interesting. So what is something that you believed about yourself early on that you discovered later absolutely wasn't true?
Yeah, so it's a funny question. Nobody's ever asked me that, but I think about this often. I was the shy kid who would never raise their hand in class because I was afraid people would judge me for my questions. I was afraid to speak in front of people. I was afraid to do all these things. Now, obviously, my job is to ask people questions. And so for me, it was the realization that I went from being the least interesting person in the room to being the most interested person in the room. And it shifted my perspective to be like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because questions are really the gateway to greatness in your life. It's the gateway to success in your business and your relationships and your spirituality and all these things. And so I think for me, the greatest misconception I had about myself was that I was this shy kid who had no ability to learn or to become better in that. I thought that my script was written. I thought it was, you were going to find a niche little thing where you sit in the corner and you'll make your money, enough to pay the bills, because you were afraid to raise your hand. And that was the biggest kind of misconception. And I overcame that. That was hard work in itself. That was getting uncomfortable. That was doing all those things. But that was probably the thing that has changed the most about me, for sure.
So let's pull on that thread for a moment, because I think it's important, Justin, that for others who are able to identify or recognize what a limiting belief is that they have, how they can work through that. So walk us through some of the tactics or strategies that you use to overcome that limiting belief about being that shy kid who sat in the corner, who couldn't ask questions. What did you do to break through that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, limiting beliefs are something everybody has. Like, I still have them. You still have them. My buddy Ed Milet still has them. Like, it's a reality. Like, it's going to fall at some level in your life. You have a limiting belief. You could be a billionaire and go, "I'm never going to be a 10 times billionaire," or whatever, right? Or, "Hey, I've created success in my life, but I'm bad at relationships." And so, for me, I've actually developed a way to overcome these limiting beliefs because I realized that I was doing it subconsciously in my life. And so obviously that limiting belief of like, I'm not the person that can ask the question. I'm not the person that can speak in public. I actually was asked at a young age when I was 19 in that job. I happened to be pretty decent at the job. And so they asked me to speak at this conference in front of 850 people. And this is the guy, I was still terrified of this whole idea of public speaking. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm ever going to do that. Like, that's not for me. And my manager at the time, the guy who was my mentor, said, people really need to hear what you have to say. Like, you can actually help them with what they're doing. And so I uncomfortably said yes. And then I did all the work that I needed to do. I surrounded myself with the right people who helped me kind of formulate this talk that I was supposed to give. And then I took action and I went and I did it. And it took a long time, and I still get nervous when I speak. And a little fun fact about me, I want to cancel every single interview I do before I do them because I still have that nerve. But it's really about getting uncomfortable. And I realized that this was a pattern in my life with any of my limiting beliefs is I had to do these three things. So it's super simple process, right? Step one, get uncomfortable. Do something to take you out of your comfort zone. Step two, surround yourself with the right people. Make sure that you have people supporting you, sending you in the right direction, cheering you on, whatever. And the third thing is take action, because nothing works unless you work. And so actually, just as of recently, the beginning of this year, I used this same exact tactic. So what I talk about is the 4 pillars of life, about business, wellness, spirituality, and relationships. And I feel like these are really the pillars of every single person's life, that if you find a way to find balance in that, that's where fulfillment comes from. And so 3 of my pillars were solid. My business was good. My relationships were great. And my spirituality was really headed down the right path. And the 4th one was wellness. And I was like, why can't I figure this thing out? Like, I was that yo-yo dieter, right? And so I was like, I need to figure this out. At the end of 2020, the COVID bug hit me. I gained weight in 2020, like most people, not everybody, but like most. And I was like, I need to figure this out. And so I kind of sat down and I was like, where is this coming from? And I traced back to when I was 12 years old. So when I was 12, I broke my hip. And I remember the doctor saying to me when I was 12, well, you'll never be an athlete. And this stuck in the back of my head. I didn't remember it until I really kind of went back and kind of reflected on my life. But I was like, that has to be it. I never believed that I could be the physically fit person. I never believed that I could push myself physically, do any of these things. And I go, I'm going to overcome this limiting belief. And so the beginning of 2021, I committed publicly to my tens of thousands of people who listen to my podcast that I'm doing 75 hard. So I got uncomfortable. Number 2, I surrounded myself with the right people. My girlfriend did it with me, committed to it with me. And so that was the surrounding yourself with the right people. And step 3, I took action, and I went through and I did 75 hard, and I got in the best shape of my life. And I've consistently worked out 5 to 7 days a week since then. And that's something that I've never been able to do. I've never been able to stay committed to it. And so I realized that this is the formula to anybody being able to overcome limiting beliefs. And so those are the 3 things I would say where I would recommend people try if they have any of those limiting beliefs.
I think that's fantastic. And I know that this is going to help many, many people that are either watching or listening right now. And we would encourage you, both Justin and I would, take notes, right? Take notes as we're going through this conversation, because there's some great nuggets of information here that is all about helping you, all about serving you and helping you to live a better life and improve not only what's going on in your personal life, but that translates into your business and your professional life as well. So Justin, thank you for sharing that. And I want to talk for a moment about what you shared about your father and what you shared about your mother. What How did you process that, the information about your father being in jail? What did that tell you? What did that tell you? Or how did that maybe shape what you envisioned about fatherhood and leadership?
Yeah, I think one thing my parents did really well is two things. Number one, they loved me unconditionally, right? Like both of my parents made really, really poor personal decisions, but they were great parents, and so they supported me and loved me unconditionally. Number two, my parents taught me at a young age that people make mistakes. And so was it upsetting? 100% it was upsetting. Like it was a weird moment in my life, when that happened. Um, but at the same time, it didn't rock me to my core. It wasn't this thing where all of a sudden I went, okay, my life is over or whatever. There was some reflection. There was definitely some questioning of, okay, well, what do I need to do going forward? But I think when you're 16, that's when he went to jail, by the way. I think when you're 16, you almost have this innate resilience because you, especially the only male in the family at that point and all these other things, you have this innate resilience to be able to push through. It wasn't until later that I realized that I had to do the work to, work through some things. And I'll be totally transparent on your show. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly either. As an adult, I realized that I dealt with abandonment issues. And it was funny because I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in hiring the right coaches and mentors and then also therapists as well. And so I was going through therapy as an adult because I thought that I had trust issues. I thought that I didn't trust people. And so what I found out through therapy was, I trusted all my friends. I trusted all these things. What I didn't trust was I thought that I was easy to leave. And so I didn't realize the damage of what my dad's actions did until later in life. But it created a domino effect of damage in my relationships and the things that I was trying to build. And so through therapy, I realized that I had abandonment issues and I had to work through them through a lot of hard work and all those other things. And I'm proud to say now I have a great relationship with my father. I was the best man at his wedding a couple years ago. I have all great relationships in my life. And I also feel like I'm worthy of people's time and love and attention. And so that was really the personal kind of, I don't want to say attack, but the personal type of effect that had on my life that I later had to work through it and figure out. And again, anybody listening, I encourage you, if you're going through some things, get a therapist or get the right coach or whatever to really kind of help you push through those things. Cause we all have it. My friend Dov Barron asks a great question. So he mentors billionaire clients and he'll ask them a question, what was missing from your childhood? And they'll always get on the defense and say, my childhood was great. And he goes, I'm not saying it wasn't great. All I'm asking you is what were you missing? And so, to be able to work through those things was a great gift in my life. And so yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest burden.
Well, thank you for sharing that and also pointing out the importance of seeking help, seeking guidance, seeking therapy, if that is the right approach to take for you as an individual. It is so important because we don't do this alone. And just to accentuate and put a spotlight on what you said, we all experience these different challenges. We all experience adversities. They may look and they may smell differently, but we all have them. And sometimes being around someone who can help us get some clarity around those and provide us the tools to be able to work through is incredibly important. So I couldn't agree with you anymore. So let's talk about what you learned through the experience of losing your mom through opioid addiction. What was that experience like for you? And you've been able to reframe that in your mind in a remarkable way. So share that with us, please.
Yeah, I think, one thing I'll say is my mom was my best friend. I was a total mama's boy my whole entire life. And so when she passed away, it was certainly that rock bottom moment for me. And so what I ended up doing, and you know me, I'm totally transparent and open about my story. I went on a 3-month bender and I was blackout drunk 6 or 7 nights a week. And then I woke up one day and I realized all I was doing was numbing the feelings I needed to feel. And so I worked through all those feelings. And when I kind of came out of my upset phase of my life, I said, what's the opportunity that this was given to me? And so one of my favorite sayings is, life is happening for me, not to me. And I've loved this saying for years. And I realized that I wasn't living in that saying. And I looked back and I said, what is this doing for me? And I realized that when she passed away, it was my opportunity to reflect on my own journey and what is it that I am battling? What is it that I'm going through that I can then turn around and work through it and then turn around and potentially help other people. And so, in the first couple of years of the podcast, and you can go back and listen. I don't recommend it. I was a terrible host, but they're all there still. And you can listen and you can hear me ask the questions that the struggles I was going through at the time. Self-love, self-worth. How do you get out of your rock bottom moments? When you were depressed, how did you get better? These were all questions for me. And I realized that all these people started listening all over the world because that was the journey they were at too. And so for me, it was my opportunity. My rock bottom moment was my opportunity to build greatness for myself, right? And so one thing I always like to say is that we all have rock bottom moments, but it's up to us to decide when the rock bottom moment is. That was mine, and I decided that was it for me, and I'll never have a rock bottom moment in my life lower than that. And so everybody has that opportunity, but it is really about reflection of, why is this happening for me? Not to me, but for me.
What an incredible way of reframing and an incredible way of viewing life and viewing circumstances that we experience. And like you, I use a very similar phrase, and it's very helpful. And one of the things, Justin, that I found, I talk about this, but there's a little piece of paper that I keep with me at all times. It's sitting in my car, and I look at it every single day. And whatever situation that I run into, and it could be something as simple as someone cutting me off in traffic, you name it. It could be anything, an argument that someone had. And all it says is, let me see this differently. And what it does, Justin, is it gives me just a sense of pause to step back for a moment from a situation and try to get some better perspective and ask myself that question. And when I do that, it's like my eyes open to another way of looking at what's in front of me. And it just helps me process information so I can actually move forward and do some of the things that you've been talking about here. So it's interesting. So I would love to find out from you how you would describe yourself today. We've talked a bit about your past and the challenges that you faced. How do you describe yourself today?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really funny that you asked that. I was on a podcast probably about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I filled out a questionnaire to be on the show or whatever. And one of the questions was, how would you like to be introduced? And I put down Justin ? Because that's just kind of who I am, right? And I've gotten the vehicle in order to make the impact that I want in this world. And that was this podcast microphone that I bought 6 years ago. And so who I am today, I'm a podcaster, an entrepreneur, a speaker, and a growth coach. I help, again, like I said, I help high performers find fulfillment in their life. And it was really about me taking the things that I went through and worked through, and then I'm able to now help other people. And so who I am today is I'm just Justin. And I don't want that to ever change. Right. And I always want to pride myself on being the person who's super present in every single conversation I have. Even if it's at my event with hundreds of people, I try my best to be as super present as possible. I've been given a gift, and that gift is adversity. And I've been given that gift in order to make an impact in the world. And so who I am is I'm just Justin, and I took action on the things that happened in my life. And now I'm able to, do some really cool things with it. And I feel blessed every single day. And it's probably not the answer you were looking for, but I'm just Justin every single day.
Well, here's the thing. It is the right answer for you, right? So there is no wrong answer to that question. So I love the way that you answered it. Let's talk about the business for a moment. So you talked about coaching high performers. You've talked about your top rated podcast. I want to first talk about the coaching work that you do. Who is your ideal client?
Yeah, I mean, my ideal client is somebody who's found success in their business life, who is looking for fulfillment throughout their entire life. So I mentioned the 4 pillars before, which I believe are the 4 pillars of your life, and I'll say them again, which is business, spirituality, relationships, and wellness. And I realize most people are lacking in at minimum one, if not multiples of those pillars. And I've found that high performers, people who have been successful in their business life, they really lack the other 3. And so, yes, they've built whatever life they thought that they wanted, and they turn around and they feel empty and whatever. And this really came from a conversation that happened on my podcast. I was interviewing a guy named Pete Evick, who was the lead guitarist for, or is the lead guitarist for Bret Michaels' band. And he said, I had this massive goal in my life to play this arena in my hometown of 36,000 people. And he grew up a Poison fan, and the fact that he was then able to then play that stage with Bret Michaels, he walked off the stage after playing that sold out arena, and he felt completely empty. As a matter of fact, he never felt so empty than he had ever before in his life. Right. And so, I realized that there was like this switch in my head of like, goals are important. They give you a direction. They give you a way to walk. They give you where you're headed. But I've also found that if you have a goal of $1 million to make in your business or your life, cool, I applaud you and I want you to do it. But I guarantee you, when you get there, the second you do, you're going to go, how do I make 10 million? And this life is way too damn short to chase goals that most people don't reach. It's funny. We tie so much of our worth to these goals, and when we don't hit them, we beat ourselves up. And so what I do is I help people not only continue to hit their goals, but to also find fulfillment in those other pillars of their life. And I do that through one-on-one coaching. I do that through the podcast. I do that through so many different ways. But it's funny because there are a lot of coaches. And so I kind of hate that term, but I don't know what else to call it. But the reason I hate that term is because everybody buys it. They get a certificate and they go, look at me, I'm a coach. But really they're a mess, and they don't really help people. They're more hurting them. And what I realized is everything that I've coached through the process of my entrepreneurship, which started and still is partially podcasting, then branding and platform building, and now this, it's always been stuff that I've done myself. And then people came to me and said, I need your help. I need your help with this. And so that's really how my businesses have been built. People come to me and go, hey, can you help me? And I go, sure. And then that's the path. But this 4-pillar thing has really become my passion. It's the book that's going to be coming out hopefully next year. It's all these things. You gave a thumbs up. This has been the most terrifying journey of my life, but we'll get there. We host high-end retreats for individuals focusing on the 4 pillars. And it really is, I think, the thing that the world needs, because society keeps telling us we should be something and we get lost in that, right? So my favorite question that I can ask anybody is, who were you before the world told you who you should be? And that's really what we try and unlock through all these different modalities.
What a beautiful question. What a deep question to really contemplate and think about. I love that. So talk to us then about the experience working with you. If someone was interested in going to one of your retreats, what are they going to experience? Obviously, you talked about the 4 pillars, but kind of walk us through so they have a mental image of what that experience is like. And then also share with us some of the outcomes that you've seen. What are some of the results that those that either attend those types of events or have one-to-one coaching with you, how has their world changed?
Yeah. So I'll just talk about the retreat that's coming up in October that we've put together. It's in New Orleans. So we rented a palatial estate. And I only take that term because that's how they talk about it. It wasn't a fancy term I came up with myself, but we rented this palatial estate. I co-run it with my girlfriend, who's a holistic wellness coach and a yoga teacher, and my good friend, Adam Kenderdine, who's actually a spiritual guru and medium. And we literally do an all-inclusive, we're staying in this house You arrive and we get to work. And so leading up to it, there's about 6 weeks of coaching. So there's 2 calls a week with myself. There's not 2 calls each, but there's 2 calls total, one with myself, one with Lauren, one with Adam. And we're bringing in guest mentors this time, including Mike Kim, who's a self-branding expert. But they essentially get there, all the food's included, they get to stay. We have morning yoga. We have multiple meditations throughout the day to help center ourselves, get some vision, get some clarity. We do workshops as far as getting down into the nitty gritty of business. How are we going to take business to the next level? How are we going to make the impact that we want? We have workshops on relationships. Like, how do we continue to pour into our relationships? And we have a little fun along the way as well. And then Saturday night, before we all leave on Sunday, we're going out into New Orleans and we're creating an experience out in the city. But it's really an all immersive, how many days? 3.5 days of amazingness where we get to come together, to connect, to let go of all the burdens that we've carried into the room, to do all these things in order to really level up. And there's people from all walks of life, man. It's really cool to see who's there. There's people that are gainfully employed. There's entrepreneurs. There's people trying to find their way. There's people that are millionaires. And they all come together and we're all on the same level playing field. And so some of the changes that we've seen, we've had people leave unhealthy relationships. I don't like to hang my hat on that one, but it was super powerful to see somebody finally go, you know what, this has been an unhealthy relationship for a really long time. And I've tried to fix it and it just doesn't work. And so it gave her the power to say, I am enough, to walk away. We've had people, kid you not, buy vacation homes. They've been hemming and hawing for years. We've had people completely up and move away from where they live to a different state because that's what fed their soul. There's just been so much change because we think we have to live one certain way because number one, people told us that. Number two, society said this is who you are. Or number three, it's just comfortable. And so really this work is about stepping up and leveling up, getting uncomfortable, surrounding yourself with the right people and going and taking action. That's really what the 4 pillars retreats and coaching is all about. And it's changing lives. And I literally have chills talking about these people because it's been amazing to be a part of, a small part of it, but it's been amazing to be a part of it.
What would you say to the individual who's listening right now that is hearing your words and it's resonating with them and they're having some challenges, right? They're having some struggles in their business or in their personal life. And they say, I'm too busy and I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to take the time and I can't afford to make the investment. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I would say, what's more important, for you to live the life that you really want or for you to continue to live in the life that you're living now? Can you afford to be miserable every day? Could you afford to clock in, clock out, sleep through life, do all these things, right? And that was the big shift for me. It was really about getting uncomfortable. And so I'm never the person to ever force somebody into doing something they're not comfortable doing. But I share experience. And so I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. The podcast took off long before my business did. I was still employed while I was running the podcast. But I was starting to get asked to speak at events on podcasting. And I said yes to speak at this one event. And right after I said yes and committed to it, I got fired from my job. And I was that rich, poor guy. Like, I did good in my job, but like I would spend it the second it came in. Like, it was like money in, money out, right? I was the bachelor living the life. And I had a moment of this way or that way. One was stay at home, pay rent, and be comfortable and go find another job. Number two was not sure if I can pay this rent, but let me go invest in myself, because at this time I didn't get paid to speak. Thank goodness I do now, but I had to pay my own way. And I chose to buy the airplane ticket, get the hotel room instead of paying the rent. And I went and spoke at this event. But it wasn't about speaking and all of a sudden, wow, Justin has gotten clients and all these other things. What happened was the magic always happens in between the margins. My good friend Terry Weaver says. I sat down with a guy for some drinks. The speakers went out for drinks and we were all sitting around, and there's a long story to it, but I'll make it a short one. We all sat around, we were getting drinks, and his name is Mike Kim. I mentioned him earlier. He's speaking at our retreat. But he said something to me that changed my perspective on business and how I approach life. And I went and made $22,000 in the next 3 weeks, which is more money than I'd ever made in 3 weeks of my life. And I never looked back. And I realized sometimes getting uncomfortable, saying those things that, those things that we've put off, those things that you say, one day I will, or once I get this done, I'll go do that. Those things are never going to get done unless you choose to get uncomfortable. And so people are like, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too this. This is exactly right for you. Because this is the thing that's going to shift your life, where you're never too busy again, to do the things that you enjoy, to serve yourself, to make sure your cup is full, because that's the most important thing.
So true. So true. So let's talk about your podcast. You've mentioned how long you've been podcasting. You started the podcast with a co-host, and I did go back and I did listen to your first few episodes. And it's interesting how everything always changes and how we have to go through those periods of pain and discomfort in order to get to and become the person that we are today. And I'll be just quite candid with you, because I've heard you say many times that you weren't a very good host at the beginning. And I think it's important to really focus on how far you've come, but what you were producing early on was not terrible. It really wasn't. And here's what's interesting to me is almost from the beginning, and I know there was a lot of work that was involved in this, but you were able to attract a number of excellent guests. And it seems like, from the outsider's perspective looking in, that the amount of time that it took to build the podcast to get to a point where you could attract super high quality guests, well-known guests, wasn't a very long period of time. So what is most important to you when it comes to delivering a podcast to your listeners? What do you think about? And touch on the types of individuals that you bring on your show. Why do you bring them on today? And what message are you trying to deliver or have them deliver?
Yeah. As you know, Jay, as podcasters, we get pitched all the time. Like, there's people trying to get on our show left and right. And I'm probably at the point where it's about 10 to 15 pitches a day. It's gotten crazy and out of hand, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with any of this stuff. So I say that to answer the last part of your question, which is like, how do you decide who you want to have on the show? Honestly, I have people on that inspire me. I have people on that I love their message. I have people on that I become friends with. I have people on that are my clients. I have those types of people. Very rarely is there a cold pitch or, hey, you're not really in my space, whatever. Like, honestly, you want to get on my show, find a way to become friends with me and hang out in my space. And at some point we go, hey, you should come on my show. And of course, the people that inspire me. And I mean, early on, you mentioned big name guests and all these things. I really believe, and we did. I mean, like, I think Steve Weatherford was episode 20 something, and he's huge physically and also huge in the entrepreneur space now. But he's somebody who came on because I reached out and I was just very genuine. And I believe when you're living in your purpose, the things that are supposed to happen fall in line, right? He went from being on my show when I was a no-name whatever to I ended up watching the Conor McGregor fight with him, and I found out he's an avid listener of my show. Like, really weird things have happened over the course of my life, over the course of the last 5 years, but that's because I live in my purpose. And so I think for me, it's really about serving as best that I can. And I do that by bringing people on that inspire me. But then I also do one more thing that most podcasters don't do. I ask my listeners what they want more of. So if anybody ever reaches out to me and they say, hey, I really enjoyed this episode, I'll go, awesome. What do you want more of? Like, since you're listening, what do you want more of? And that's changed the game for me, because still the number one way to grow any podcast is word of mouth. And so if I were to, say Mary messages me, made up name, Mary messages me and says, hey, I really liked this episode. Hey, great. What would you like more of since you listen? I want this, this, and this. And if I then deliver for Mary, she's then going to go tell 5 of her friends. And since Mary's a listener, her friends are going to be listeners. And now all of a sudden we grow. And so to answer your question, the longest winded answer of all time. 1, live in your purpose and deliver on your purpose. 2, be true to yourself. Like, bring on people that you want, not just because, but because you actually want to, like, have that conversation. I think when you are invested in that person, it's a better conversation anyway. And number 3, serve your audience. Like, find out what it is that they want, and give them that. Like, don't be selfish. Like, I stood up in front of a group of people at PodFest when I was speaking one year. It's a sold out room. It was actually the #1 breakout session of the whole event, which was really, really cool. And the first thing I said was, podcasters are the most selfish people I've ever met. Now, keep in mind, this is a room full of hundreds of podcasters, but it's true, right? Like, because we always think that we're great, we have this great platform, but the reality is, like, the people that are willing to come on and share, they're the great people. And so act that way. And I believe if you act that way, the people you want to interview will find a way on your show.
Beautiful. Well, the formula that you just talked about, the steps that you have taken, that sounds like a magic formula for growing a successful and thriving business in general, right? It's asking for feedback, it's listening, it's fulfilling a need, and making sure that you're delivering a solution and delivering information or a product or service that fills that need, that is going to take care of your ideal customer base. So I love that. And you do have a great podcast, and I enjoy listening to it. And I would encourage everyone who is watching and listening right now to subscribe to the Growth Now Movement podcast. You're going to get so much value out of it. It is fantastic. And obviously, we're going to provide links to that in the show notes. So before I ask my final question to you, share with us where we can connect with you, provide whatever links you can, and we'll make sure that we add all of these to the notes.
Yeah, just like your shout out there. I mean, wherever they're listening to this show, my show's there too. So just type in Growth Now, enter, and it'll pop up. And if they like it, hit subscribe and hang out with me and go along this journey with me. That's probably the best place. Obviously, we have the retreat. I have no website for the retreat. It's more of an invite only. But if they email me, justin@growthnowmovement.com, we can hop on a call and have a conversation. And then I have my live events, which I really believe is the greatest collection of speakers and movement makers and people who attend of any event I've ever seen. And so that's finally coming back. Live events are back. And I know you're loving it as well, but you're in Florida, right? So you've had you've had live events the whole time, but live events are back, and they can go to growthnowsummit.com. They can check out the lineup that we've announced so far, many more to announce, but they can grab their tickets there and come hang out with me. And that's probably it. Oh, and Instagram. That's my favorite platform, @JustinT.Schenck on Instagram. You can see how to spell my last name in the show notes. Good luck.
All right. Love it. Well, again, we'll certainly make sure that we add all of those links to the show notes, and I appreciate you sharing that. So here is my final question to you, but I am going to ask you one other thing. So I shouldn't really say it's the final, but as far as the final question that I'm going to ask, it is this: What are you adding or removing now from your life to live a more fulfilled life?
It's a good question. And the reason I'm hemming and hawing over the answer is because I'm like, do I share this? I'll share it. So I mentioned how the 4 pillars, right? And the one is spirituality. And I'm doubling down right now in the spirituality pillar to get some more clarity and direction. And so to explain what spirituality is to people in my mind and how I describe it. First thing is, you have to believe in something greater than you. Something created this, whether it's God, source, energy, Mother Nature, whatever. That's the first thing. Second thing is, we have to know that there's an energy flowing around us at all times. And so when I talk about doing work in the spirituality pillar, I talk about making sure the energy is flowing with us instead of against us. And so that's the work that I'm really doubling down in and what I'm adding right now by doing some Reiki sessions and more meditations, and much to my girlfriend's enjoyment, I'm getting into some of the crystals and stuff like that. And so I'm really doubling down into that space right now. So I would say adding more practices for the spirituality pillar are what I'm doing right now. But it's forever. It's a constant growth. But that's my main focus right now.
Wow. Well, you and I will have to have a separate conversation on that at some point, because I would love to dig a bit deeper into that area and learn more details and specifics on what you're doing and the impact that that's having on your life. So thank you for sharing that. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, but I want you to take the direction on this, is since you are an exceptional podcast host and you and I both host a show, what question would you have liked to have been asked that you weren't asked?
Yeah. I'll say this. I mean, and I don't expect anybody to ever ask me this, but one question I ask all my guests. Obviously, if you went back and listened to the beginning, we weren't asking it then. But something I ask all my guests now is a two-part question. Number one, what's your definition of success? Number two, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? I just think it's a super powerful question. And so I'm guessing you want me to answer it.
I do. That's a great guess.
And so I would say my definition of success is I get to do what I want to do, when I want to do, with who I want to do, while making an impact in the world. That's my definition of success. And the three things I do, there's actually four things I do every single day to ensure that success. Number one is I do some sort of visualization practice every day, whether it's 5, 10, 20, or 30 minutes every single day, just so I get some more clarity on who I am. It also gives me a moment to slow down, breathe, and see where I am and where I need to go. Number two, I take a 3-mile walk every single day with my girlfriend. So in the morning, we take a 3-mile walk, which helps me move my body, gets me moving in the morning. Plus, we get to reconnect, and that's kind of our daily meeting time. Number three, I actually learn something new every single day, whether that's from reading a book or blogs or podcasts or whatever. Learn something new every single day. And number four, I reach out to somebody I care about every single day, and I just let them know I'm thinking about them, or check in on them, or whatever. And so those four things are something that I do every single day to make sure that my cup is full. Because what I realized with that question and asking all these high performers is that every single day they did these things that were filling their cup. It was serving them. And that's what I was lacking in my life. I was trying to pour from an empty cup. And so I make sure those four things are the non-negotiables. That way I can continuously pour into others. And so that is the answer to my question. And it's been such a fun journey to unlock that, because that was the game-changing moment in my life when I started to implement that stuff.
I think that's amazing. It truly is. And if you were asking me that same question, my responses would be very similar. So success to me, Justin, is the freedom to do what I want, when I want to do it, with those that I want to do it with, and also creating impact in this world. And then the things that I do every single day, my day starts with gratitude, which I write down in a gratitude journal, which is right over here. The next thing I do is I actually feed and exercise my mind and my body. So exercise is incredibly important. I'm reading and I'm learning something new every day. And I'm putting myself, when I exercise, into very uncomfortable situations, because as you've talked about throughout this podcast, in order for us to grow, we have to get uncomfortable and we have to take action. I also meditate every single day because I'm looking to be able to get some clarity and some space and recognize my own thoughts, recognize when I have that negative self-talk or those limiting beliefs, where I can step back from just a moment and question that and say, really, Jay, is that true? And then also I don't eat until around noon to 12:30. So I skip breakfast every day. I drink water throughout the morning, but those have been a game changer for me. So thank you so much for sharing yours. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your insight and being part of Business Minds Coffee Chat. I truly am grateful for you, and I can't wait to hear your next podcast and then see where our paths cross next.
For sure, Jay. Thank you so much, man. This conversation has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for allowing me to share things I've never shared before. I always love when that happens, man, but this was phenomenal. So thank you.
Absolutely. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Both of us would love it if you would just share with us maybe one or two key takeaways that connected and resonated with you. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help your business, all you need to do is visit jayshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Tune into Growth Now Movement, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear
Business Consultant.
Jay Shear
Jay Shear Business Consulting.